upset us so much was the fact that here in Orange County, Hillary Clinton won. And she won with 51% of the vote. Trump only got 42% of the vote. That's the first time a Democratic presidential nominee has won Orange County since Franklin Roosevelt won it in 1936. So that's been a long stretch for the Republicans. And that's the first time it was broken here in Orange County. So it's no longer that super conservative area that it had a reputation for most of my life. The real reason for hope that comes out of that election is, even though the election didn't go the way we wanted, here in Orange County there were some very interesting things. 4 of our congressional districts voted for Hillary Clinton, and those congressional districts that I'm talking about have been long held by Republicans. So you're talking the 39th, which is Ed Royce, you're talking the 45th, which is Mimi Arnold, you're talking the 48th, which is our dear friend Dana Rohrabacher, and you're talking the 49th, which is Darrell Issa down in the southern part of the county and in San Diego County. All 4 of those people are in districts now that voted in favor of Hillary Clinton versus the Republican candidate Trump. Now, they have historically done very well in those districts, but now they're in trouble and they're being targeted, and you've probably heard about that. Darrell Issa probably had the closest race because it was really quite close in terms of the number of votes, but the others had 10% or so or more of a plurality in their election, but things are changing. You may have noticed the highly respected Cook report just changed Rohrabacher's district to a toss-up, okay? And he had, I think, don't hold me to the number, something on the order of a 12 to 15% plurality when he ran just 2 years ago. So there's real promise for splitting these districts. Now, how important is that? Well, 4 seats right here in Orange County represent almost 20%, 17% to be exact, of the seats the Democrats need to pick up in the Congress in order to regain the majority. So we can contribute mightily to the effort that the Democrats are trying to make if we are able to get out the Democratic vote, which is always hard in a midterm election, but if we can do that, it's going to be a very positive contribution to the effort. And in the process, hopefully, we can get rid of the misfit called Rohrabacher in the 48. All right. Well, I'm sorry, I went the wrong way here. All right. Now, this is just to give you a feel for how the election went in our part of of Orange County. So this is Seal Beach down here, Huntington Beach down here. The purple and all these little lines are precincts, just to give you a feel for how big a precinct is, and we're going to go into that in a little more in a minute. But the purple are the people the precincts that voted in favor of Trump, whereas the green are those that voted in favor of Hillary Clinton. And this map's available county-wide, but it just shows you where the concentration of the Democrats are. Okay. And those are the districts that we're going to be wanting to work as part of this Grow DPOC effort, because those are voter rich. Your resources are better spent there than in neighborhoods where you don't have as many Democratic voters. That's not to say we don't want to be able to work the precincts that went for Trump, but it just means as we crank up, and this is a major undertaking we're talking about. We want to invest our resources first in those areas where we have the greatest likelihood of turning out votes. This just gives you a feel for the how votes are cast here in Orange County. The number's a little different than the number that Jana gave you, because she was talking about 57% of the people were voting by mail, but here in Orange County, according to the Registrar of Voters, 45% voted by mail.
Yeah, it was statewide.
Okay, all right, but I'm surprised though there was that big a difference, because I would have expected it to be higher here, if anything. But anyway, 45% vote by mail, and that's a big chunk. In addition, this just gives you a feel for, wait a second, okay.
There's like 30.
Okay, it was just slow. This is a breakdown in Orange County of votes. So you got Republicans that represent about 37% of the electorate of registered voters. Democrats are about 34%. The no party preference is very significant. It's 25% now. So if the Democrats are going to win, or for that matter, typically even for the Republicans to win, you really have to pick up a bunch of these votes. And that's critical, and that's going to be very important here in Orange County. This other is about 4%, and that includes all the little parties that you've heard people talking about. Okay, now, there we go. That's slow. Okay, so the objective then is to build relationships with friendly neighbors, basically, friendly voters, and you got to do that over a period of time. And that's the process that we're going to talk about now that's called GROW DPOC. That's just an acronym, but basically it stands for Grassroots Organizing for the Democratic Party of Orange County. And the objective, as I was indicating before, is to work those precincts that were won by Hillary Clinton, approximately 1,000 of those out of a total of about 1,668 precincts countywide. So we're going to be working, that is, as a county Democratic Party, we're going to be trying to work all 1,000 of those precincts and more if we get the resources to do so. The average precinct is about 920 voters, just to give you a feel for that. That's obviously going to be less houses because you have multiple people living in each house. And there are about, here in our local area, there are approximately 10 precincts here in Rossmore. I'm sorry, 10 precincts in Seal Beach, and in Rossmore there's approximately 16 or so. And in Los Alamitos there's even more that I haven't even counted up yet. But those are the number of precincts that we ultimately want to be able to work as a Democratic Club of Seal Beach, because we consider that our service area, if you will. Our service area is basically the area that forms the Los Alamitos Unified School District. So we've got a lot of growing to do. Yes?
But Mike, it looks like the districts around us are the purple ones.
No, not all of them. If you go back, I'll do that for a second.
Okay, maybe you'll get to that. Okay,
Some of them are, but you got green down here. This is Seal Beach down here. This is Old Town, and that's probably the hill up there. It's a scattering here. But what you do see is that probably the more affluent areas, the beach communities, are the areas that have a higher count of Republican voters. That's the way it is. But there's definitely a lot of votes that we can get here in Seal Beach and in Rossmore. And there are some that are precincts that did vote for Hillary Clinton.
Well, there are Democrats in the purple areas too, if we have time.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So the white is the base, and then
Okay, now these aren't telling you who voted for what, but it's just to give you a feel for the size of a precinct. This is Seal Beach downtown, Old Town, and this is the hill area here. And then if you go to the next one, I'll never get this direction right. Okay, and then this is Rossmore, and this is the district we're going to be working in today, and we're kind of in the middle of it, right here.
And that has about 900 and something voters. The area we're going to be in,
That's the average. I can't tell you what the number is.
less than 1,000.
Right, okay. So the objective, obviously, is to maximize the vote for Democrats come November. But we don't have a whole lot of time to get there, because if you saw that 45% of the votes are cast before the November election. The Orange County Registrar of Voters typically will put out the vote by mail about 40 days in advance of the election. So we have to have done our thing, really, 40 days before, whatever, November 4th or whenever the election is going to be that's coming up. So we have to really grow the organization. This is the first group of people in our part of the Orange County that have really met to learn this process and are going to start to engage in the process. There are other parts of the county that has done it as well. I think Irvine's probably the most advanced in this area. Would you say that, Quinn?
Yeah, Laurel had started, she was one of my phone bank captains in the Clinton campaign. She ran 2 of the phone banks, and she basically just kept kind of going right after there. So they've been canvassing for, I'm gonna say, a couple months now, so yeah.
But the point is, in order for us to succeed, in order for us to do the precincts that we're talking about, we have to grow a lot from this group to a much larger group. And we have to do it in a relatively small amount of time.
So you're saying tell your friends, tell your kids,
Bring a
tell
friend,
your
Right.
bring a
family.
family
And,
member.
and there's another way to do it, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So, and that is to, and the way you do that is you start building teams and assembling teams, but it really starts one conversation at a time. So it's not just a matter of a few of us as individuals starting to knock on doors. We're not going to get there. We have to build and we have to grow very fast. And this is really the concept behind it. If I'm just trying to select a group of people, let's say I said, okay guys, let's just all get together and start doing this canvassing thing, we're not going to cover a whole lot of territory. But if we advance a little in concept and say, okay, well, each of us is going to assemble our own team, and we're going to start to do it. Even that's a pretty slow growth process. So they talk about the snowflake process, which is each of us starts work in a neighborhood. We look for volunteers, people that are enthusiastic, that are really glad that you knocked on their door and say, how can I get involved? And you try and get them involved as a volunteer, and you just keep growing that way. So you not only have, oh no, what's that?
And the advantage to the snowflake model too is if one person drops out, it doesn't fall apart. Versus the leader, if the leader leaves, that whole model falls apart. So snowflake, even though it a while ago was having a bad connotation, it really is a strong way to do a leadership model. Because everybody takes a little bit and everybody's communicating with everybody. So no information gets lost and nothing gets dropped.
It's the way that Obama and Clinton ran their campaigns, is basically as you grow it, and then as it gets bigger, you break it off and cover more area, so it's very effective.
And a snowflake becomes a storm,
That's right.
Exactly.
There you go, I like
It's
that.
a blizzard that takes over.
a blizzard.
Okay, so you start with one person that's starting to organize a neighborhood. They find out what issues that are important to the voters, and we'll be talking more about that when Joyce is speaking. Find out if they're registered or if there are registration changes that you can make, including non-party preference types that might switch to Democrat. You're getting to know your neighbors. I'm going to be walking my own street today after we finish, and I'm looking forward to it because there are a lot of Democrats on this street that I haven't even met yet. So that's a positive. You can share your concerns with your neighbors, and they can share their concerns, obviously, because we're going to be asking. And when we get past the primaries, where we have actual candidates or are endorsed candidates for the Democratic Party, we can start sharing information about those candidates with them. But most important, or at least equally important to all that, is that we can recruit volunteers in the process, and that's how you grow. So that's actually the first step. Then once you start recruiting others, you're going to have somebody's going to have to start coordinating some of these small teams. So you're going to have a neighborhood team leader, and they're going to also have some support people, and this will vary depending on where you are. This isn't necessarily an exact description of what would happen, but we have people in our group, for instance, that have had a lot of experience with phone banking, so we might want to set up a phone bank. It's another way to do this. But the point is, you grow, and then you need a team leader to start working with the other teams you have out there. And I went too far. And then ultimately, it just grows accordingly. It's just it gets bigger. So basically, this is the approach. You get to meet a lot of people in your neighborhood, but you also are building an organization. And ultimately, the hope is that we're going to be able to do this over a longer-term period of time. The objective is not only to be prepared for the, hi Dale, how you doing? We're not only trying to prepare for the midterm elections, but ultimately to have something in place that we can keep building on right up to 2020 and the presidential election. I think the Democratic Party here in Orange County is really trying to build something that will last, and it will give us a capability really to turn this county around and have much better representation with the values that I think we all share. So that is, in essence, what we're trying to do. And with that, Joyce is now going to share with you the process that we call,
Communications that count.
yeah, but it's the listening.
Listening.
Empathetic listening,
Empathetic
okay?
listening.
So that's what we're gonna talk about now, okay? Do you wanna do this yourself? No. Oh, you don't, okay. All right. Well, I haven't done very well with it.
She didn't take any time answering now.
You know me, Quinn, always looking for a way
There you go,
out.
I like it.
So this is a listening campaign. We're all talkers, but we're going to learn to listen to the voters now. Traditional canvassing, usually I have worked for a candidate, knocking on a door, would you support this candidate? And then I have to explain who that candidate is. Kathy. And that's not what we're doing. This is really to hear from voters, to make voters comfortable reaching back to us when we do our outreach. So what are the characteristics of a good listener? The first thing is eye contact. And that involves taking off your sunglasses. I'm a big sunglass wearer, but after you knock on the door, make sure your sunglasses are off, and so that we can see each other face to face. Head nodding. As you're speaking, I'm reacting. Lean forward, body language. None of this. None of this. Just open to the voter who's talking to us. Ask clarifying questions. We're going to be talking to the voter about issues that are important to them. So you speak back to them the information they've given you if you're unsure about what you've just heard. Summarize what you think you're hearing. This is all common sense, but it really, this helps to guide us today. And you're going to be able to take these handouts with you, and you're going to be working in teams. We're not sending anybody out alone. We're going to work in teams of 2. So if Alex doesn't remember something, I've got his back, and I jump in and just say, is this what I heard you say? Be an active listener. Pay attention. Give the speaker your undivided attention. So you're knocking on door number 3. Don't be thinking about what the person from door number 2 said. Make sure you're really focused on that voter. Acknowledge their message. Recognize that nonverbal communication also speaks loudly. Again, being open. If you're standing, being attentive. If you're sitting, not looking around the room. Look at the speaker directly. Put aside distracting thoughts like, oh, look at that cute pumpkin over there. Don't look at the pumpkin. Look at the voter. Walking into new houses, it's easy to get distracted. Pay attention to the voter. Show that you're listening. Again, use your body language and gestures to convey your attention. Nod occasionally. Smile. Make sure you're in a good mood. Both of us smile because we're going to be in a team. Note your posture and make sure it's open. Encourage the speaker to continue with small verbal comments like, yes, okay. Just staying positive, but once again, focusing on listening and not giving your comments. Provide feedback. I'm telling you, people really want to talk. So we're going to be asking what issue is important to them. And most likely the first thing they're going to say is Trump, the president. And they're going to talk for a long time. Just let them unload. That's why we're here. This is about quality, not quantity. A lot of the doors we're knocking on today, people aren't going to be home, but the ones who want to talk, let them talk, and they want to talk. So then you can reflect back to them. I hear what you're saying. Is this what you mean? What do you mean when you say? And it just, again, common sense. I may not be understanding you correctly. What I thought you just said is that you're okay with the way things are going in the White House. You know, just basic common sense. Reflect back to people what you're hearing them say. Okay. Defer judgment. This is really important. Interrupting, it's a waste of time. We have a tendency to do it. We're going to learn about patience. We're going to learn about listening today. Allow the speaker to finish before you engage. And don't interrupt. Don't get into arguments. Being quiet is your best weapon. You can just sit and smile. And once again, this is where the team takes over. If one person is feeling awkward, hopefully the other member of the team jumps in to just ask a question, ask a clarifying question. Find and reinforce common ground. You really care about our education, you really care about our teachers. That's something I understand. I have grandchildren. It's really important. It's just basic common sense. Engage in the issue that matters to the voter. Minimize or deflect areas of disagreement. Once again, here's where silence is your friend.
And I might make a couple of points here, Joyce, because what we're doing in the exercise we're going through today is basically we're asking for input. We're not providing them any views of our own. That's not our objective. It's to hear what they have to say, make note of it, and ultimately we will be putting it into our minivans so that we can actually track the concerns of the voters. But the point is, if they don't have any feel for where you're coming from outside of the fact you seem to agree with them, that's great. Because we're not looking to sell them right now on a candidate. We're trying to get their input. So that's why it's important that you understand you don't engage in an argument. If they say, you know, they're very concerned about the way the tax code is being altered, you listen to them, you get their input, but you don't start feeding them your concerns because you're going to take a lot of time that way, and our objective is not for us to share our feelings, it's to hear their feelings.
And it's remarkable how much you will learn listening. I've been doing voter registration since the summer, and people come up to us and we learn so much listening to people. It's an education all the way around. You had a question, Del.
Yeah, I'm sorry, it's a few seconds late. Aren't we targeting Democrats?
Oh yes, we're
Okay.
Democrats and NPPs.
Okay, so,
And AIs.
okay.
Yes.
So primarily, I mean, I've walked Rossmore more years than probably anybody can imagine in all kinds of campaigns. And the first thing that happens is, I'm sure everybody will know this, is that most of the doors are closed and people don't come to their doors. So we're really on friendly turf. And so we're asking them to share their concerns about what? About anything? And is our goal,
We're going to demonstrate this.
okay, maybe I'm ahead of the game, because I don't understand what our goal
The
is.
script just asks them what issues are important.
Okay.
And then the second question is there another issue that's important to you? So
And
it's
we're
really just
asking
about
also
issues.
that for them to get involved and become volunteers. Is that also
If-
part of the thing?
We're going to demonstrate this.
Yeah,
Let's
but
move
it
on.
depends on how interested they seem to be. If it looks like they're just anxious to close the door and get back to the football
Thank you
game.
very much.
Okay, exactly.
Right.
But if they're really interested and they get involved in expressing their feelings with some enthusiasm, those are people that are quite likely gonna be at least interested in attending our club meetings, and so we can talk to them about our club.
Okay,
And there are also potentially people that might want to get involved in a more affirmative activity like this. And so we can talk about their possibly volunteering to get involved.
okay.
And we're gonna provide you with material to cover all of that. You're gonna have all that material in your clipboard.
Okay.
This is just, I'm just trying to demonstrate about listening, because again, we're all talkers, but today, we're not gonna be talkers. Today, we're gonna be listeners. Because we care about the voters, and that's how we bring them into our group, is by listening to their concerns. Okay? Active listening is a model for respect and understanding. You're gaining information and perspective. You add nothing by attacking the speaker or otherwise putting him or her down. Be candid, open, and honest in your response. When I say be quiet, I don't mean that you can't have an opinion, just make sure you have respect when you're forming your opinions. Assert your opinions respectfully, if at all, and treat the other person the way you want to be treated. So we can go to the next.
Okay.
Okay, so now Mike and I are gonna demonstrate sort of how this works.
Okay, excuse me, let me just put this here if I could.
Sorry. So we'll start with the friendly Democratic voter. And I have my script. Thank you. Knock, knock, knock.
Hello, hello, how are you? Who are you?
I'm Joyce Dahlman. I'm a volunteer with the Democratic Club of Seal Beach. Are you Mike Moore?
I am.
Oh, hi, Mike Moore. It's very nice to meet you. Today, we're talking to voters in the neighborhood because we're worried about what's happening in the country. And I'm wondering how many of the neighbors feel the same way I do. What do you think is the most important issue facing the country today?
Trump, dumping Trump. He's screwing things up, so that's my major concern.
I hear what you're saying, that you're unhappy with Donald Trump. Is there anything specific that,
It's a pretty long list if I get specific. We can start with his pandering to the so-called white nationalists, and he seems to do that in a lot of different ways on an ongoing basis. I don't like what he's done with the, or what he's been doing to sabotage the Affordable Care Act. But I have a long list. Don't agree with the man and the Republican Party in terms of many things they're trying to do.
I hear what you're saying. You were talking about the Affordable Care. Could you elaborate on that?
Well, the biggest concern is that in a number of their programs, they seem to have no care or concern or empathy for the people that